JP.
What's up, buddy? How are you doing?
Good, man. Welcome to Easy Talk. This is the first time I think we've spoken in 5 or 6 years.
It's definitely been a minute since probably the last training camp, I'd say.
Yeah.
And then I know that you know, we switched gyms and gyms moved and shit like that. Shit happens. So growth happened. That's what happened. So.
Growth happened. That's a good way to describe it. I want to make sure that before we even start this episode, we get one thing completely straight. I love training with you.
Yeah.
You were one of my favorite training partners from then and on. It deeply saddened me when the logistics of training with you no longer worked, but I just wanted to let you know that you were one of the favorite guys that I learned from, trained with, hung out with. You were just good people, and I can't thank you enough for being on this show today.
Oh, man. And same deal. Like, I look back at all the times that, like, for instance, like, a lot of people don't know, like, in training camps when people were needed the most, I was in training camp, you were in training camp. I remember when it was a Thanksgiving. We missed Thanksgiving. Where we were at, we were training,
Yeah.
So we were hitting each other, punching each other in the face, going at it.
I just
Getting each other ready for fights and stuff, So definitely mutual, for sure.
I just want you to know it meant a lot to me, and I never forgot about it.
Yeah.
That being said, since then, you
Yeah.
said you've both been growing. I agree. You are now in an industry that is emerging, growing, and the landscape of which is shifting constantly, and that's the marijuana industry.
Mm-hmm.
But slightly different. You're not necessarily quote unquote selling marijuana. You're selling all of the production needs
Yep.
of. Could you go and elaborate
Yeah.
what the business is, how you got in it, and why?
Yeah, so the business it's a hydroponic store. We kind of sell, I should say, it's a garden supply store. We sell a lot of hydroponics, garden supplies. Because I get a lot of people that come in and like, this ain't a hydro store. Because like specifically hydro is hydro, and people get pretty funny about like terminology, and especially in industry you go into, people are really snobs about certain things. So when you say hydro, it's got to be 100% hydro. Otherwise, you can't use the term hydro, right? So that's why I would say a garden supply store, more or less, right? So yeah, but we offer a lot of stuff as far as like soils, amendments, products to be grown, not just cannabis. A lot of the stuff goes hand in hand. Vegetable farming is just as it's just as easy and as knowledgeable as all the materials that you need to grow cannabis is the same as growing vegetables.
What would you say, like, if you were to do a pie chart of like the customers coming in, though, what would you say would be like, cannabis needs extra, not cannabis needs, like,
I'd
so
say
like
probably
that's
60-40.
really,
Yeah,
between
surprisingly.
cannabis 60%.
Yeah, 60% obviously leaning more towards the cannabis and hemp really too, because we do have a few our hemp farmers, CBD stuff like that, and then we have obviously the more of the commercial aspect with the recreational stuff too. But you'd be surprised like how many people just want to come in just to learn how to grow vegetables for themselves. Obviously because the economy's kind of crazy right now.
Kind of
Vegetables
is an understatement.
pricing on fruit is out the ass. So people, if you can grow a little bit of strawberries and grow a little cantaloupe and stuff like that to help ease that curve of cost a little bit, then definitely do so. So a lot of people are trying to get into home gardening. So it's definitely a niche market as far as like offering these products to people. And where we kind of fall short a little bit against our competitors online is definitely like Amazon. Those kinds of stores, but I'd say that we fall short just because we don't have like an online store. But where we kind of capitalize on that is that the shipping of like soil and jugs of nutrients and stuff, it gets pretty costly, especially with freight right now. Freight costs and logistics has been a nightmare the last few years. And obviously, if you're trying to ship products from California to the Midwest, yeah, you're going to eat a lot of that cost. So that's where stores like my store, for instance, we can kind of take up those ease, and you're looking at the products firsthand, you're seeing what you're wanting. You may even be on the table of not knowing what you're actually looking for, and then us stores can tell you, hey, this is what you need. So it's been a pretty good market so far.
I could say for myself, I think brick and mortar is going to make a return, and I might be slightly biased when I say this because I think the push to online commerce was two-pronged. Number one, because of COVID, people were kind of like, I want to say forced into it.
Yeah.
And two, it's just easy, right? It's like it's more commercially viable for the busy person. However, there are industries in which I think that that's just not necessarily like validating. I think clothing is one of them. I can only speak for myself, but anecdotally, I want to try something on before I make that purchase.
Sure.
And then also things that I don't necessarily know about. So like, let's say I'm getting to hydroponics for the very first time.
Yep.
If I went to Amazon, maybe I could watch a YouTube video. Maybe I could like do a little bit of research myself and like try to educate myself, possibly. But how much easier would it be to like physically go there and just ask the questions outright? Like, hey, this is what it is that I'm trying to do. JP, can you help me out? Can you start me out with like the base products? I'll tell you who does it really well. First Form with their supplement superstores and like all their nutrition insight. Like you can go into that, not know a damn thing, and leave with a bunch of product. I think there's something to be said about retail, brick and mortar, actually physically going to a store. That I believe, perhaps I'm incorrect, will make a slight return. Will we come back to like the super centers and like having 4 malls to a city? I don't think so. No. But do I think that COVID shaped a lot of trajectories and we're going to see a swing back to like more mom and pop shops, more entrepreneurship, more local footprint? I do think so.
Yeah, I definitely agree there, because like if you're starting to look at like how people are, they're more consumer based as far as like knowing who they're buying from, right? Yeah. So like no longer are you buying from this huge capitalist system, you're buying from a mom and pop shop, right? Even though we did have to go through the capital system to get to my products to A to B, right? But you're still supporting a mom and pop shop.
Would you be willing to pay more if you knew that the money was going to your the local community?
Yeah, so that's the other thing too, is like a lot of people are definitely, the support for local small mom and pop shops is huge in smaller communities. You don't probably gonna get that as much in bigger cities as much as I do per se, but you definitely get that in the smaller communities in the rural county that I live in.
Do you feel like you're getting? I guess what I'm trying to say more than anything is that there's always this connotation that people will always be attracted to like the sales, right? Mm-hmm. So like if I can get X product for $10 instead of $11, then I'll get it for $10. Yeah. But what we're kind of seeing in real time with a lot of this push against Amazon, push against Walmart, push against these like honestly Goliaths in retail is that might not necessarily be the case. I can speak for myself. I refuse to buy anything on Amazon. Mm-hmm. I refuse. I bought the real Anthony Fauci by RFK Jr. for a buddy of mine. Yeah. And on Amazon you can get it for $19. I got it from Barnes & Noble just out of spite, just because I didn't want to get it from Amazon. I paid $9 extra to get it from Barnes & Noble. That's fine with me. Yeah. I'm at the point now where, like, I truly believe this, that it doesn't really matter, like, if you vote red or blue. Mm-hmm. What you really have, the true power, is your commerce. It's how you spend your green. Yeah. And I can only say that for myself anecdotally. I try to spend my money, even like the restaurants I go to, the places where I buy my suits, the places where I get my jewelry, the places where I buy, my whatever it is. Mm-hmm. If I can get it from the local farmer's market, if I can get it from my local haberdasher, Ben Lawler, if I can get it from whoever it is that I know who's getting the money, I know where it's going, I'm going to do it, even if I have to pay a markup for it. Yeah. Which is funny because we got to this position because people went from not wanting to pay the markup, right? Yeah. We got here because everyone wanted to save their money. And now it's like everything is so grossly... The irony in this is everything is so grossly expensive right now in an effort to push off production, push off all these things to try to make everything cheap. We're eating our own foot. Yep. I don't know what the solution is, but I do believe that the pendulum is swinging back and we're getting back to a more like homogenized market, which, the arguments for what COVID did to us are like with every day kind of evaporating. But that being said, I was more curious as to why you went into the grow portion of this business versus just the selling of the product. Because I had Lindsay Hoff on, and she's actually in the business of selling marijuana, right? So that's not necessarily what you do. Mm-hmm. Could you explain to me like why you chose this path and not the other?
Yeah. So my business plan initially when I first started going to recreation and medical in the state of Missouri was to actually obtain a commercial license to sell. And to extract in the state.
What year was that, if you don't mind me asking?
That was back in, 5 years ago now?
So around like 2019?
Yeah,
okay, just before COVID.
Yeah, right before COVID hit. So we had put in 2 applications to the state. We unfortunately kind of fell short because it went through a grading system, and the top graded applicants won the licenses. So... And unfortunately, what
went into that grading system?
What went into that grading system was paying people money to get a license, basically. So, like a fundraiser, for instance, for Governor Parsons, we all got invited to this fundraiser, and I shouldn't say that majority of the people that went to that fundraiser got licenses, but you could bet your bottom dollar that if you were to go check that list and go check the list of the people who have licenses now, there's probably going to be some correlation there, you know. So, but anyways, we didn't end up winning that, so it's kind of a bummer. But I knew that I had a place in the market somewhere, right? And I remember going to this class right before we put into this, put in the license. It was a cannabis business class, and it was to advise you on how to build your license to the state, because state licenses are pretty lengthy, especially when you start getting into like tobacco or alcohol or anything like that. There's background checks. You have to have your SOPs in check in order. Meaning,
What's an SOP?
So standard of operation procedure. So like if for instance, like if we had a delivery service on there, we had to have stops, gas points, who was in charge, if there was a break involved, like literally anything that went from point A to point B, we had to have in that standard of operations and procedure, and that was for the business plan. So everything had to have been built way ahead of time. So we did a lot of I did a lot of classes on what the state and standardized license would look like, right? So in that class, in that course, we'd kind of touch base on one thing that I took from that a lot. I took a lot from that class, but one thing that really stuck in my head was that, hey, if you don't get a license, don't get discouraged. There's placement for you in this industry. So I was like, all right, so there really is, and a lot of people really got discouraged and didn't win the license. But when I started thinking about that, I'm like, all right, so what placement do I have? I know I'm a good grower. I've been growing for years. I've had customer service relations before. I used to do door-to-door sales, so I kind of can talk to people a little bit. Selling wasn't my hot suit. It definitely wasn't the biggest thing that I enjoyed, but at the same time, there was that customer relation, that one-on-one that I could never get back. And, so I knew that I could definitely have a place in the industry with, basically owning a store and offering a product. And I didn't know what product that was at that time, right? So I was like, I don't know what I want to do. So kicked around a bunch of ideas. During the time, I was still doing construction. And what really kicked me in the driving is when COVID was hot and heavy, when we became the essential workers. So I'm down there working, I'm becoming the essential worker, and I'm like, am I really an essential worker? I'm like, I'm down here fucking busting my balls down in a hot ass basement. I'm looking around, I'm like, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? And I started looking at the older men.
Can I ask you why that epiphany happened during COVID? Because you had been working construction before then, but was it because everybody else wasn't working and you were? It was the contrast?
Yeah, it was the contrast. Like, it was, I guess you could say it was like, if I'm an essential worker and this is the essential work that I'm essentially going to be doing the rest of my life, is this the path that I want to continue, right? And I started looking back and I'm like, man, nothing against the people in that path. Everybody's got to take a path, and you have to make money to survive and feed your family. And luckily, I was in a position where I didn't have kids at the time. So I was like, it's time to start this business. I've been thinking about what I wanted to do as far as get into the industry. And a buddy of mine kicked around. He's like, why don't you open a hydroponic store, And I was like, that's a good idea. Why don't I open a hydroponic store?
Terribly sorry to interrupt the content that you're enjoying right now, but if you've been watching our content for the past couple of months, you realize that Easy Talk is a brand new podcast. We're genuinely trying to figure this thing out as we're going. Some growing pains for sure. If you are genuinely enjoying this content, we feel very humble in that, but we would like to ask that you would also subscribe and like to the channel, simply because it does help us in the algorithms and ultimately to grow. So take a second. I'd really appreciate it. And on with the show. You said that you didn't have kids at the time, so you're like, let's pull the trigger on, entrepreneurship. Do you think if you would have had your kids back then, or just a kid, you wouldn't have done it?
It definitely would have put a wrench in the game as far as financial, because, the first year, like, and anybody that runs a business from finish, even when I say from start to finish, is from starting and running the business successfully. The first year of ownership is up and down, like it's between you're paying the bills one month and the next month you're like, holy shit, I could pay the bills for the next 3 months, but you don't, obviously you don't want to spend all that money, right? So we keep that in there because the fluctuation, it's a flow chart. next thing you know, 3 months down the road, you're going to be hitting 2 months of solid debt.
Yeah.
So you've got to float yourself off.
Would you say that you need like a full year of sales or a full year of operations to understand what it is that like you're going to be bringing in and kind of get a rough assessment of
Definitely.
what your float for the whole year will be?
I'd say definitely a year. And then I'd say a year, but then you've also got to take into consideration like where are your flaws in that year too. So for me, and like I listen to a lot of podcasts, so it was cool to like listen outside in, because starting business, I didn't know shit about nothing, honestly. Like even how to Secretary of State, starting your EIN or any of that stuff, like getting your business.
Your EIN meaning submitting for your LLC and getting a
all
business
that
account.
stuff, yeah. So like all that.
But it is substantially easier than
It definitely is.
Like you think it's this daunting task.
Yep.
And I always tell people like starting a business is actually very easy. You could do it in an afternoon. Running a business is the tough part. So like if your hurdle is getting started,
probably have no business being in it.
you have no business starting your own business.
So
that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. So like just like obviously, like that's kind of a little scary bit of trying to navigate some of that stuff. But again, when I've navigated the first business license through the state, so I was like, oh, this is nothing. Just another piece of paperwork that I got to fill out to get going, right?
You want to know what I noticed when I was starting up my first LLC or my first business was the predatory nature of that. There is an industry of people. I'll give you a prime example. I hate that I forgot the name of the website, but like, I'm talking about like 5 years ago, I Googled like how to set up my own LLC, right? And it's like the very first thing is like a sponsored ad on Google that says like, we will set up your LLC for $300.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, $300, like that's not too crazy, you know what I mean? So I go in there and I don't know what made me do it, but I was like, I'll do this tomorrow. I'm lazy right now. I'm gonna go play video games. Thank God for procrastination. Because the next day I did it again, but this time like the actual state of Missouri came up and not that like sponsored ad. And it's like, oh, it's $50.
Business file.
And you can and you can do it in 5 seconds. I'm like, I just saved myself $250 not doing it that way. But what I think to myself is like, how is that legal? Like how are there service sectors that are charging 6x the original cost as like a service fee? I'm like, this is insanity. Like, how is this a thing?
Consulting,
it's predatory.
It's consulting fees have murdered every industry, and
it pays. You pay for ignorance.
Yeah.
I said it before, and I'll say it again. It is expensive being poor in this country because when you have money and you have means and you have all these things, you kind of understand like the lay of the land. You can kind of navigate it a little better. You understand where you can cut some corners, where you can't. You already have relationships and networking, so you can make some deals with some people. But if you don't know anybody, if you don't know anything, get ready because you're about to get like absolutely reamed at every single stop, and then you're gonna look back and go, "Oh my God, I could have saved myself $1,000 here, $500 here, $300 here." And then before you know it, you sat there and wasted maybe 10 to 15% of your budget on just dumb shit, predatory shit. I don't know. I'm sorry to deviate because we were talking about you were starting a business, but I laugh at that because you're not the first person to say like, oh, this daunting task. I'm like, guys, we could do it in 10 minutes.
It seems daunting at first again because like you don't know.
Yes.
Right. And then when you get into it, you're like, oh, that was a lot easier. Now, fuck, I've formulated like 3 or 4 other businesses since then just because it's that easy now, really. So it's like, oh, fuck, just jump on the Secretary of State. Formulate your business, and then you're doing business as or LLC or whatever you happen to be, right? So now,
it can get complicated once you pass the LLC. So I'll say like this is the caveat is
sure.
LLCs are pretty simple,
Yeah.
but once you kind of expand past that, then it can get pretty daunting. There are I would highly advise that once you get to a certain level, get an accountant, get a lawyer.
For sure,
Highly advise that.
And that's where like I was looking back and like, where do I fit in those categories? Obviously, if I'm not an S Corp and C Corp, I don't need to worry about that kind of stuff. So
not anytime soon.
Yeah. So yeah. And
actually, hopefully you do.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like maybe down the road, I'm building up multiple businesses and brands where I can put it all maybe under one company or something like that. But as of right now, just one company is what I'm dealing with as far as the hydroponics store. Now consulting, that's something that we jumped into too with the store as well.
Consulting and what do you mean by consulting?
So now that the legalization has came to front, a lot of these people, like you said, basically have all this money, don't know what to do with it as far as ignorance, as far as not how to apply it with
They want to get into the cannabis industry. They just don't know where to start. Is that what you're saying?
So they obtain licenses by this fraudulent awarding system that happened, right? So now they have this license, don't know what to do with it. So they hire guys like us, the consultants, guys that have grown, guys that process, stuff like that. So that's kind of where where I've fallen in the last couple of years to help.
You're basically
pay for bills.
selling an SME. You're a subject matter expert, and you're outsourcing it to people.
Yep.
Which is what a consultant is. But I just never thought of the term consultant for the cannabis industry. That's
Yep.
It's interesting, but it makes sense to me.
Yeah. So right now that's kind of like the big push and movement for a lot of us people that really didn't get licensed. So we can still bring in like a lot of our SOPs and a lot of the knowledge and stuff because
That's so insane to me, though, because like think about what you just said out loud. You didn't get the license, and now you're consulting for the people who did, because they don't know how to actually do this.
Yeah, ain't it insane? But it's because they paid other consultants how to write their applications in such a way that they win the license, and now they don't. The state what's screwed up is the state doesn't hold them to the license that they filed, right? So meaning that if they filed all these crazy ass SOPs to get their 10 points out of that question, well, the state needs to hold them to that 10-point question, right?
Is there just a certain number of licenses?
Well, there was the argument from the state is that they limited licenses to keep products from hitting the streets and then getting into kids' hands. Yeah, so we already know what that was about. Yeah, so limiting the licenses was obviously limiting who could be in the market.
Limiting business.
Yeah, it's limiting who
Call
can
it
be
what
in.
it is. It's artificial capitalism.
Monopolizing who can be in, who can't be. So.
Well, at least you created an industry of consulting out of it.
Yeah. So I mean, there is definitely some brighter side to the end of the tunnel. There definitely have opened up some micro business licenses now. So the micro business licenses are essentially a rec license, but you're subject only to
Rec meaning recreational.
Recreational, but you're subject only to do business with other micro business licenses. So you're kind of narrowed in this little weird market, which federally that's illegal. You can't really do that. But when federal legalization comes, all those little stupid mandates that they mandated are going to get lifted because you can't hold the business and tell them like, oh, you can only do business with these people, but these people are going to do business with everybody else.
That just seems very un-American.
Yeah. it's just crazy, and it's wrote into our Constitution, unfortunately. So it's kind of one of those weird.
Is it
things.
really?
Yeah, unfortunately. So it's one of those weird things where once federal legalization comes, then it's becomes what becomes
all this bullshit gets lifted.
Yeah. So I'm hoping, anyways.
Well, I had Lindsay Hoff on, and she was basically under the assumption that like though the narrative is that federal legalization is quote unquote soon. She was making it sound like soon could be anywhere between like 4 and 5 years away from now.
I would say 5 to 10, probably.
5 to 10.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of what you're doing is in preparation of, but I mean, is the goal to hold out until then? Or are you like, there's lobbying firms for essentially every industry.
Yeah.
I would, even though you're like a smaller business, I would assume like the bigger players would want to push a federal legalization sooner rather than later.
For sure.
So how is this taking 5 to 10 years? Like when you say 5 to 10 years, what's going into that equation?
I'd say because a lot of the times is like the people pushing the paperwork. So when you have
the bureaucracy,
the politicians and the bureaucracy behind it, that's probably what's really honestly has been holding up this whole time. A matter of who's gonna take over the federation or the legalization of it. Is it going to be FDA? Is this going to be DEA? And that's where
it wouldn't be the DEA. It would be the FDA because the DEA would be more under the illegal use of, or perhaps more prescription. But we're talking about recreational use. So it would be the FDA just to make sure that the product is safe for human consumption.
Yeah, but then
at least in mass, because we say that, but then like how many times do you see recalls on like baby formula, this and that or the other? It's like, well, are they really doing their job?
Yeah. So I don't know. That's the big argument is like that I've seen anyways, as far as like who's gonna control it, who's gonna control the market? How are they gonna make the rules and mandate the rules for each state?
Do you think we were better off before now, or do you see like some sort of promised land for this? Because like, think about it logically. Let's say it gets legalized federally and taxed to all hell. I mean, I remember when I was in high school and college, and weed had a certain value to it because it was a scarce resource, and you didn't know where you're necessarily getting it from, and there was a market underneath. We called it the underground economy. But do you think it's better that it becomes legalized taxed to all hell, extremely regulated, extremely, you know.
Yeah, so sorry, I do think a little bit because there's a lot of guys that do want to come out from under the ground because it's just a simple fact of like they want to pay taxes. They don't want to be running underground and hiding in the shadows anymore. So and you'd be surprised how many people are willing and ready to do that, but we can't because of all the fucking tape that's holding you back. If you can't obtain a license and to pay taxes, then how are we supposed to pay taxes and all this stuff, right? So it's like you're stuck in this little gray area, we call it. It's not the white market. We're not in the black market. It's the gray market. It's like it's a weird transition. Like I don't know.
Would you transition to growing yourself and selling weed products once the recreational lift kind of happens?
Yeah, so that's the end goal for us, and for me, anyways. And me and some business partners of ours is to obtain more licenses. Sorry, we've obtained a few micro business licenses. I won't say the names.
Yeah.
But we've obtained a few micro business license to get our game and get our name in the industry and to sell products to the state and stuff. So
That's interesting, man. This is when I was talking to Lindsay about marijuana, I just, you know, I have a lot of friends from varied industries, from logistics to technology to finance, what have you. You know what I mean? This whole industry of weed just makes no fucking sense to me.
Yeah.
It seems like we are, you know, simultaneously accepting and then not accepting, and because we haven't accepted it, we have to create these hurdles and loopholes, and you know, essentially creating middlemen in an industry that shouldn't exist because it's federally illegal.
yeah.
Yet here we are talking about the economy that exists within it.
Mm-hmm.
I just find it to be like absolutely insane. And you know, we were talking about the Constitution and like how the states and federal works, and I just, you know, regardless if you're red or blue, I like the idea of 50 states each organizing and running themselves. And then similar to like capitalism, like the structure of capitalism where like industries or businesses will compete with one another, and whoever creates the best service or product will kind of rise to the top, right? And people will vote with their money.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the idea of like, you know, not necessarily a big brother, a federal government coming in and creating sweeping legislation, but letting the states decide how to govern best themselves. And then you, the people, get to decide where you want to live based on where you take up residence.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily like this trend of like more and more and more people wanting, you know, a federal government to come in and do sweeping legislation and having just too much power into the say and doings of your daily life. This is insanity. I mean, weed is maybe the catalyst of what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
The COVID shot 3 years ago would have been the catalyst for this conversation. I just don't think people understand like who smokes weed, liberals or conservatives. I think now it's a little bit of both. Don't get me wrong, but I would also go to as far as to say like more liberals do, like more socially liberal people would be more susceptible to smoking cannabis or ingesting edibles or whatever. So it's kind of funny to me how like a voting bloc that believes in like, you know, Big Brother is also being hindered by Big Brother. It's oxymoronic.
Yeah.
It's very ironic. I thought that you were like getting into hydroponics because like that was actually the passion, but I guess, you know, the whole industry is a passion of yours, but this is basically a means to an end. Like you're basically just playing the waiting game, the long game, because there was just like some bullshittery and
and then, like because like, you know, like finding your placement, and I found my placement, and just waiting now is a wait game, getting your name out. And that's kind of one of the things that my buddy was telling me is like, if you open a store, at least you'll have your name attached to that store, right?
And history.
So like people will come to you and not, maybe you don't even know what the fuck you're talking about, but people are going to come to you knowing that they come to a hydro store, knowing that guy knows what the fuck he's talking about. He's the guy, right? So become that guy. And I'm like, all right. So obviously I started touching up on a lot of my knowledge as far as the commercial SOPs with growing, the standard operations with sprays, what sprays you can use. So things like that. And the big thing that I've been doing lately is consulting with solventless. Solventless right now in the industry is going to be the forefront with extracts. So with the extracts right now, we have BHO and solventless. So BHO is as solvent and solventless based, and solvent based, and solventless based meaning there's no BHO, no hydrocarbon, no
What
nitrogen.
is solvent?
So a solvent would be basically meaning like a BHO. Or,
what is a BHO?
So butane.
Okay. Okay.
So, sorry.
No, I'm,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just
my bad. Yeah. So if you're using like butane or if you're using any kind of like basically like a gasoline product to strip that the THC from the plant material, that's what's considered a solvent product. And now the push to the market right now is because people don't like to smoke things that's been stripped with gasoline. I mean, I personally don't, you know. So now the big push in the industry is
might I ask why? Like, what is the?
it's for health.
Okay.
Yeah, because
So
there's
there is an impact.
yeah, so there's a little threshold, a small threshold that they allow the amount of butane in your extracts. And if I'm consuming a product, I don't want nothing in that product besides what that product is. I don't need no secondary other bullshit that you had to pull because it's left over and residual in this product, and now there's a variance that
It contaminates it.
it's contaminated. So, exactly. So I don't. So now the big push in the market has been solventless. So there's no more contaminated product. It's just THC, pure THC or pure terpenes. So now knowing that ahead of the time, I got into extracts and started learning that side of the industry because looking back at some of the industry that's already been established, like like Colorado, Washington, Oregon, and Denver, some of these other markets, Michigan, and you start to see their sales, and where the sales are going is into the extracts. A lot of the sales are going to extracts or going into the edibles.
Why do you think that is?
I just think it's because it's easy. Consumer, it's one of those things like you don't have to roll a paper up or roll a joint up. You don't have to pack a bowl. You literally can just grab a pen or grab an edible and and then you're done. You're right. The experience is over, whatever, right? So, the other part is that it's for a consumer when they come in and looking at all these weeds and all this product can get pretty daunting at you. You coming in for advice and this guy's like, oh, you need this, you need this, you need this, and then you see a pin, you're like, I'll just take the pin and I'll try the pin and I'll go home and deal with it later on and I'll figure it out on my own, right? So I just feel like a lot of that times is, and it's just easier, right?
Do you think that that's maybe? I want to be careful how I say this because I'm on the realm, or like if there was like a left or a right to this, I would be on the side of every adult in this country has the right to ingest whatever it is that they want to do, like ingest for themselves, right? Like I, as a functioning member of the society, have no place to tell you what to do with your body in any way, shape, or form, and vice versa. The only time where I would say that no longer applies is if like you're under the influence of something and now you're affecting my life. That's why we have laws like you can't drink and drive. I'd be all for like you can't smoke and drive, right? Or create a threshold, like we have like I think it's like 0.08 or something like that on the alcoholic level.
Yeah.
Anyway, something very similar for marijuana. My concern though is, if you make it too easy, now you're going to kind of like proliferate it and make it like so readily available that maybe I want to be careful how I word this because I'm not saying that people will do things just because it's easy, but maybe there should be a small hindrance to the consumption of drugs, not legalization hindrance, but perhaps like 18 years or older, 21 years or older to purchase and consume.
Yeah.
You're seeing kids nowadays vaping nicotine as a means to get away from cigarettes. Well, it's like, if we didn't have cigarette cartons like at every gas station, would you have as many teens smoking X, Y, and Z? So I guess my question for you would be like, is that necessarily a good push for society to make something easier to ingest if it's a drug?
If it's a drug, I feel like, and this is the kind of like open side of me, the free spirit side of me is that like you should experiment and have fun with life. That's
JP said, I'll try anything twice.
The free spirit side of me says, yeah, definitely have fun. And no, for real though, honestly, like I don't feel like that anybody should tell anybody what they should put in their body.
I agree.
And that's where it comes.
Or not put in their body.
Or not put in their body. Yeah. So it's.
Do you think there should be an age?
I do believe the age gap is huge, and I'll get into this a little bit because, like, for me, for my first experience with marijuana, was at the age of 15. Looking back at that again, I probably would have wished I waited till maybe 18 or 19 because just knowing that, like, the growing mind, I'm still a young teenage kid at that point.
Yeah, but I would make the argument then if that's the metric, then it should be 25.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you, by the way, I'm a full proponent of like 25 for like military service, 25 for like, I'm the grandpa now because I'm 31, so like I'm above the age on a lot of these things. But like, if what I'm trying to say is like blanket it.
Yeah.
If your threshold is like the cerebral progression and growth, right? So like when does the brain stop growing or stop maturing? Well, then logically speaking, that would be 25.
25, yeah.
So if we're really going to hold ourselves to that threshold, it should be 25 for alcohol. It should be 25 for marijuana. It should be 25 for anything that is going to affect you cranially. So,
sure. But I think in society's role at the age of 18, you're thrown into that life right away. Like I was anyways. Like immediately at the age of 18, I went out and moved, had my own house, had my own.
Yeah, you were a baby though, brother.
So I mean, learning. But at 18 though, you're an adult in life, in society.
In the eyes of the law.
In society, you're an adult. You know? So. Yeah,
have you met an 18-year-old recently?
No,
brother, they are not adults.
They're not what we were, that's for sure.
Well, I don't even think we were. I think we look back on it with rose-tinted goggles. Like when I look back when I was like 20, 21, I was an idiot.
Yeah.
I was an idiot. Like you should not leave me to my own devices. I would make bad choices.
Yeah.
It is very much the case. Like I could tell the difference between 18 and 21. I could tell the difference between 21 and 25, 25 and 30. I can tell you like, holy shit, there's been leaps and bounds of maturity, progression, learning, all these other things. That being said, it's like, I'm of the mind that it's actually not about the cranial progression. I think 18 is a solid like start for any drug that you want to consume, not because of like any sort of like scientific measure or whatever, but because that's when you can enlist in the military. Yeah. And if you could take a bullet for this country, this country can't tell you what you cannot consume. Yeah. Like that's my whole thing. If you told me that you have to be 21 to drink and 18 to serve in the military, which is how it is right now, that doesn't make any sense to me. I can take a bullet in my head, but I can't take a shot. Yeah. Literally. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, where's the science here? Yeah. I'm for whatever age you allow for military conscription, give them all their rights and let them do whatever it is that they want to do because they're going to fight for my freedoms. Yeah. They deserve the very freedoms that they're fighting for. For sure. So that's just my 2 cents. Anyway, I was asking you this beforehand. With all this stuff that you're doing, you said that you took the leap during COVID. So I know that you were saying that when you were working construction, you were kind of like this essential worker and you're like, what the fuck am I doing? Like these people are working from home. Meanwhile, I'm busting my ass, risking my life, quote unquote. Yeah. Would you say that COVID made your life better because it allowed for you to kind of take that leap?
Yeah. I'd say
not necessarily the strain, but like that time. Now, I'm not saying COVID itself, but like the lockdowns, the measurements thereafter. Ben Lawler and the Tom James family will ensure that whether you're purchasing your first custom fit suit or your 50th, the process is unrivaled. With the experience and quality of the Tom James name, allow Ben Lawler to help shape the vision that is your professional brand with a suit that speaks to the conviction in their craft. With fabric sourced here in the US, you'll know quality and craftsmanship are top of class. Like a sculptor examines wet clay before creating a masterpiece, Ben Lawler will walk you through the process of selection, measuring, and stitching to ensure your finished product is a work of art. Putting your trust in Ben is a guarantee that your brand will elevate to the next level. And always remember, you don't get a second chance at a first impression.
But yeah, no. So go back. Sorry, what was you asking again?
Essentially, what I'm trying to say, or what I'm trying to ask is, during COVID, this is when you changed the trajectory of your life. Yeah. So, like in a lot of ways, you could say that COVID was a net positive to you. Yeah. Do you look at it like that?
Yeah, so I mean, again, like it was definitely a positive in my life as far as pushing me to want to open a business, get away from the norms of working for somebody else, like, because I'm looking back and listening to these guys talk and saying like, yeah, I'm on my second term of retirement, and I'm like, you've retired twice already in construction? Like, how the fuck do you do
I don't
that?
know how you
right?
could say that.
So, well, these guys have been in construction for 40 years, so...
Yeah, but if you retire, you're done.
That's on... So
then if you go back to work, then you're no longer retired.
On union paper, you can retire at, like, let's say for, like, 30 years, you've done 30 years in a union, you can pull your first retirement and still continue to work.
Oh, so kind of like double dipping, like Social Security, but it actually matters.
Yeah, so, yeah, exactly, yeah. So I'm like, man, I don't want to be that guy because I'm on my first pension because I was in the union, and I'm like, I'm gearing up to be like another 10 years. I'm going to be this fucking guy, and I don't want to be that guy. So it pushed me to want to be something different, something else, right?
Well, I would also make the argument that, like, thank God you have a pension.
Yeah.
Because I look at people in corporate America talk about the 401k as if it's like this grand savior of a product. And I'm like, you realize the 401k is an invention to kind of supplement people with something that's completely inferior to the pension plan. Like, the reason why employers get so angry at millennials and like the younger generation for like staying out of business for like 2-3 years then bouncing is like absurd to me, because it's like, why would I stay?
Yeah.
You reserve the right to get rid of me for whatever reason you want. You could just say it's layoffs and I can't even fight back for it.
Yeah.
You could, make me move and then lay me off. You could put me on salary, make me work 60-hour weeks, which 20 of those hours would be for free.
Yeah.
Because now I'm not paid hourly anymore. Like, you have so many tools at your disposal to fuck me over as the employee. It's like, why would I give you more respect and more loyalty than you actually deserve?
Yeah.
And I whenever I talk to some of these entrepreneurs that talk about labor, and I'm like, you guys don't get it. Like, these people are not everybody can start a business.
Yeah.
And just like not everybody can be like, I know some people that work for Amazon that are like the people that just like box things and tape it. And to me, I'm like, oh my God, you must hate your life. But when you talk to them, they fucking love it.
Yeah.
That's what they want to do.
Simple.
Like, low brain, high volume. That's what they like. Everybody's different. It doesn't make them right or wrong. I'm like, okay, there's a spectrum of people, right? Not everybody's going to be an entrepreneur. So you, as an entrepreneur, now have the responsibility of saying, okay, well, how am I going to take care of my labor source so that they want to work for me? I shouldn't look at them as an adversary. I should look at them as a partner.
Yeah.
And like, maybe some people have unrealistic expectations.
Yeah.
Fair. Everyone wants 6 figures now. Everyone wants, 3 months of PTO, 6 months of maternity, paternity, whatever it is. Like, find that sweet spot. But like, I don't like this battle between labor and owners. I don't think it serves America well, and I would love to see the 401k crash and burn and bring back pensions, because then you're going to have loyalty back to businesses, which can then thrive and sustain themselves, and you have Wall Street collapse overnight. Because if you think Wall Street is not propagated on 2 things, the 401k and mortgages, and to some extent the automobile industry, but it's basically those 3 things: real estate, retirement, automobile. That's basically it. You take that out of the equation, like 75% of Wall Street falls tomorrow. Yeah. Which then begs the question, like, there's a correlation between Wall Street's growth and the diminishment of the resources to the employee. It's weird, JP, because I love finance. I went to school for it. I got a double major in finance and economics. I love business. I love everything about entrepreneurship and all this other stuff. Simultaneously, based on the time that I grew up, I don't want to say that I have like, liberal tendencies, but I do understand the plight of the working man. It's like, it's never been harder to start your own business. It's never been harder to like sustain yourself and be your own boss, quote unquote. I think government's role needs to step in at some point, because what you're having is, I don't necessarily agree with unions personally. We could talk about that if you want, but like, I think unionization is a direct result from government's inaction to step into unfettered capitalism. We don't have unfettered capitalism, because then you'll eventually lead to monopolies, right? You want competition, even if you have to force it. But at the same time, you can't pick and choose the winners based on whoever government decides to, who greased the wheels, who got the licenses, who did this, that, or the other. So I think a sweet spot needs to be maintained. I love that you have a pension, because that is a dying product. But I got to be honest with you, I don't like unions. And that's just, I just don't like the idea of like having, this is going to sound so bad after I say it. You're coming together because your elected representatives failed you. That's what's happening. And so like, it's not that I don't like the idea of unions. I don't like that they ever need to exist. You elect representatives. Are they not representing you?
They should be.
Why do you have to unionize? Like, instead of unionizing against a business, unionize against your representatives. Vote them out. Get people that will elect your constituents, that will fight for your freedoms, your rights, your life. That's just my 2 cents. Because now you're creating like this like tertiary middle management, because you're going to have union bosses, you're going to have all these people, you're going to have to pay union dues. Why?
That was the biggest, I guess, argument when being in the union, because I loved all, as far as like the our pension plan, the insurance was awesome. But the thing was, like, yeah, paying union dues was like, why am
You
I
made more, you got more, but then you have to pay more.
why am I paying some asshole to sit inside the loony office to tell me that I need to vote one way or the other?
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the fuck is this?
You're creating bureaucracy because the bureaucracy that already exists isn't doing its job. It's like, so I want to be careful that I'm saying this properly. It's not that I dislike unions. I understand why they exist. I dislike that they even have to exist because that means the people that were elected to represent you are not doing it. And we're kind of like allowing for this malaise, like the corrupted politician can keep his power because you're now outsourcing that to, and now you're just fighting the corporations yourselves. Like, you shouldn't have to. These people should. That's what you elected them for, to fight for your freedoms, to fight for your rights. So I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but what can I say?
It's definitely a strong in St. Louis. And
unionization?
Yeah, unionization.
They have to.
Yeah, Missouri in general, really. Missouri, Nevada's huge too.
That's the problem with the conservative party. Listen, I'm neither Republican nor Democrat. The problem with conservatives is they think that businesses can't do wrong. It's like, yes, they can if you allow them to. So it's like you have to fight for the individual. You cannot give the individual everything, but you should fight for them the things that they are the rights that they have by virtue of God and being birthed in this great land. Outside of that, you owe them nothing, but you do owe them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That third one, when you allow for other peoples to eliminate that pursuit, that's your purview as the government to step in and allow for that to happen again. I'm not saying that you have to make them happy, but you have to allow them to pursue happiness. You still fighting?
Yeah, I've been training, living life, I've actually taken on more of a coach's role more than anything lately.
How's that going?
So it's been pretty good.
Just kickboxing or?
Just kickboxing. Got 2 students right now that have competed all across the freaking globe, freaking Brazil, Europe. I don't think they did the Irish Open because of COVID. COVID kind of screwed up some of that cross training across or cross fighting across the country, across the seas and stuff. But with that said, I've kind of slowed it down a little bit and only taken on a few students, so it's kind of helped as far as like.
Oh, you can pick and choose.
Yeah, progressing them to a point to where they can be an elite level striker or whatever they want to be, right? So or like one right now, I'm helping coach. Eventually, she's going to take the role to become a coach. So kind of getting in that mindset of becoming.
How does that make you feel?
Feels good,
Yeah.
Honestly, like, looking back at like my career personally, like, yeah, I didn't get to do all the things that I wish I could have, obviously. But
join the club.
and that's just something that I'll struggle with until I die, right? That's something.
You think so?
Yeah, personally, I it's something I still personally struggle with because I'm still young enough that I feel like I compete, but looking back, I'm like, I'm not 22, I'm not 25 anymore. I'm encroaching on 37 soon, and those numbers in my eyes, like, I can still compete, but I'm not going to be that same JP I was 22, where I thought I could become that high level, elite level striker where the world knew my name or whatever that goal was, right? Because I never wanted to be like a world champion per se. I just wanted to be well known in my own rights, right? Like,
elaborate. What do you mean? You wanted fame?
Not much more fame, just the respect under the name, like.
You don't think you have that now?
I do. I'd
make the argument that you do.
I do a little bit in some of our community, but like, if I look at like a world stage, right, and I see across the cage like freaking Bas Rutten or somebody, right?
Yeah, but you're talking about like the top of the top of the top. The truth of the matter is, man, the majority of fighters like that get to the high levels. I mean, outside of like the top 10 boxers or the top 10 kickboxers or the top 10 UFC guys, could you name people in the UFC or Glory or whatever that retired 5 years ago? You know what I mean? Like, I can't, and I'm a fight fan. So the truth of the matter is, and what kind of helps me ease into this next chapter of my life, because I started coaching as well, is that I did what I did. I got as far as I could. I dedicated the time. I'm glad I did it because fighting taught me so much. My time's over now. And there's like this humbling aspect to it. I will say that you said something earlier that I do resonate with, though, because like you're 37, I'm 31. And I think to myself, like, you know, when I'm training, like I still fucking got it.
Yeah.
I can compete. I can still do this. But then it's like, to what end?
Yeah.
For what purpose?
Yeah.
So it's a weird dichotomy, man.
Yeah.
I'm not a bitch,
Yeah.
but I'm acting like one.
Well, and that's like in that too, and like you have a kid, you know, and I've got 2 kids. And it's like the time dedicated you need to really properly train yourself to be that person that you once were or where you want to be back again. Good luck to that family. You know? Something's gonna suffer, and I started thinking about that too. I'm like, man, I don't know.
I think you could do it if you're exclusively fighting.
Yeah.
Like if your 9 to 5 is
Not
like you're
coaching.
going to the gym, and you're not coaching, you don't have a 9 to 5 already. The problem is the majority of fighters have 2 jobs, and fighting is one of them, right? And then they have the day job. So like I would agree with you up until a point, but like once you're making, you know, 6 figures per fight, then you actually can be a fighter and still like at home. But for the vast majority of guys, that's not what we're talking about. And I know exactly what you mean because I was training like 3 to 4 hours a day after work. So it's like you work 8 to 5, get to the gym at 5:30, there till 9:30, which is fine when it's just you. It's even fine if it's you and the girlfriend or you and the wife. But the second you have kids, dude, that. And can I be honest with you? I don't know if you'll agree with me or not. Don't feel like you have to. I would rather be at home with my kid than at the gym training.
Personally, yeah, and that's where I'm at too. Like you struggle with that. Like, yeah, I want to fight. And then you're like, man, I don't want to give up that time for my kids.
Yeah. It's like I want the glory. I want that feeling of adrenaline. But not at the cost of being there with my kid. I'd rather hang out with my daughter.
Yeah. And then so like the Uric fight, you know, like or Usyk, the Usyk afterwards he started crying, talking about like
all the shit he missed.
The times that he missed from his family and shit. And like, man, that's real.
Not just the time, but he was like, I missed my son's birthday, I missed my daughter's birthday, I missed this, I missed that. And you know what's irritating about fighting, and I find myself falling into this trap myself, and I need to do a better job of like pulling myself away, is like once you have a great fight like an Usyk Fury, what's the first thing everybody's talking about? The rematch.
Yep.
And it's like, you guys got to give these guys some time, man. Let them go home and enjoy their families, their lives, because these camps are insane.
Oh, next level. I mean, all day, every day. You know?
How much money would it take for you to get back in? Because there is a money like element to it as well, right? It's like no such thing as bad jobs, only bad salaries. So is it like $100,000, baby? Watch the kids.
Yeah, you know, something like that. You know, 6 figures. If I could replace my
day job,
current salary, you know. But other than that, again, that's where I still like. Mental health is a huge thing too that we don't take into consideration a lot of times. Is that like we all have a clock. We've been punched in the head for a lot over the time.
Oh, you're talking about like the physical mental health, not like the emotional.
Yeah, you know.
Do you think you suffer?
Sometimes like if I'd say yes because I have this I don't know how you say it, like because I'm regretting that I didn't pursue a career on past what I'm at now, right? Because I kind of hung it up after my last concussion. Kind of was like, all right, I need to take some time, let my head heal a little bit, and but yeah, I mean, the mind thing is definitely something that it's not talked about enough.
You when you started training though, you were at Sauer's MMA, right? Way back in the day, and I remember the stories you guys used to tell me of the sparring rounds there, and it was basically you guys were fighting for free.
Yeah, usually every freaking night, it was after sparring, our coach Doug would be like, all right, so who's sticking around sparring? After an hour and a half session of beating the hell out of each other drilling. And so that was every single night, for fucking probably 7 years straight, 8 years straight.
You want to know one of the craziest stories any fighter has ever told me? It's actually Drew and Grande. He told me that there was a time where he sparred. It was at Sauer's MMA. And he left sparring and he didn't remember the drive home. Yeah. So he was on the wheel, he was driving home, and he said he got home and he's like, how did I get here? Yeah. He's like, I remember sparring, because he had so many concussions, right? Like he was getting, I don't know if he was getting beat up or whatever, but he went from training to home and didn't remember getting home. And I remember he's telling me the story, and I'm 22 at the time, still kind of fresh in MMA, and I'm like, that's not good, brother. That's not a good story. Yeah. No, I got to be honest with you. I don't know if it's because of the way I trained. We trained a lot, and there were some days when we went hard, but the majority of it wasn't. And I got to be honest with you, JP. Early in my career, I sparred hard because I didn't know any better. Mm-hmm. And then once I got to 5-0, 6-0 as an amateur, I just decided I know how to fight. I don't need to spar. I don't need to fight for free.
Yeah, no.
Is there a time and a place to kind of get ready for like the speed and the tenacity of a fight? Absolutely. But like if you're not in camp,
For sure.
or if you're not helping somebody who is in a camp, or if you're not trying to peak at the right time, I don't know why you're sparring hard. Do you think, knowing what you know now, you trained like an idiot back in the day?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we had training like freaking gladiators, you would say, but really it was retarded training.
Yeah, not really.
So it wasn't very smart to spar that much or spar as often as we did. You know,
what would you have rather done? More drilling, light sparring,
more drilling, and then like the aspect like we used to do like a lot of light sparring, more volume sparring. We'd have days where we'd come in and throw fucking 200 punches around, you know, and that was volume sparring for us because we weren't trying to kill each other. We're trying to
touch each other.
Trying to touch, move.
Pause. Trying to touch each other.
Yeah. Yes.
I look back on it with fondness. No diddy. I look back on it with fondness. I'm glad I did it. Are there some regrets? I don't want to say regrets. Are there some things that I wish I would have achieved? I think that's every man. I also think that like even if you're at the top of the game, you wish you could have done more, right? If you had 10 title defenses, you wanted 11, right? Yeah. I just think that's the duality and the greed of man. But you were talking about like the respect and admiration of your peers. You have mine for whatever it's worth. And I know it might not be as grand as you may have wanted, but one of the things that gives me solace is that like the people that I have around me truly love and respect me. And I want to be careful how I say this. I had a lot of people throughout the years say they were there with me, say they were like, my friends, my this, that, whatever. But then when you take fighting out of the equation, who's still there? Those were the ones that were really with you. Yeah. And I found that all the ones that were really with me or really loved me and respected me had nothing to do with fighting. And
no. Honestly, dude, fighting's I always say this a lot. It's a solo game, and at some point you have to be very just you and only you. And if you don't make it about you and you make it about other people in the gym or whatever, you're kind of hurting yourself. And it sucks to say that, but you have to be selfish.
How do you balance that with the fact that I do believe like iron sharpens iron? So like, one of the things you were saying is like when I had a fight, you were there. When you had a fight, I was there. Like, how do you balance being selfish in the sport while simultaneously being there for your teammates?
As a coach, that was one of the hardest things I couldn't balance it, honestly, and that's something I failed short of, because I was more so like leaning in the coach aspect. I kind of didn't give myself the time that I needed to be that guy, right? So, and
you were investing in others more than you were investing in yourself.
Yeah. So when it's time to click on that click, like like there's times that you need to be progressing in your camp and to hit that switch. And now you're in go mode and it's time to fucking fight, or it's time to lay back and like wait till that opportunity comes to where your mind and body and everything's ready. Just like you're in tune, ready to go. You already knew you've been to camps before where you're like feeling shitty the first few weeks and don't feel like you're touching people. People are hitting you and you're like, fuck, this sucks. And then in that camp, you flip the switch. You see everything coming. You can dictate the pace. You push the pace. You know what's coming. And unfortunately, the last couple of fights for me, because I've trained people so much that I didn't get to feel that in my camp. So when it come to fight, I was just fighting against my own will, So that was terrible, right? So it's nothing I never wish upon anybody.
I think you may be the first person to suffer from coaching too soon.
Yep.
Because you actually are a phenomenal coach.
Yeah.
But perhaps you weren't necessarily ready to take on that mantle.
Yep. No, for sure. That's something that, looking back now as a coach, I've been coaching for close to 8 years now. Yeah, close to 8 years. Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of things that I would do way different now.
Hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but coaching and fighting, never ever would I suggest that to anybody. You can't do both. You can either be a coach or you can be a fighter.
And that's because fighters have to be selfish.
Yep, you have to be a selfish, and if you're not being selfish and like I said, in some of those sparring rounds, yeah, you're being mindful of your partner, not trying to hurt them, but it's you. You're winning that round. It's all you.
It's still competitive,
right? But when you're coaching, you're like, I can't, I need to lay off a little bit. I can't beat my dude's ass because I'm going to be.
Or how many times you've been in sparring rounds where someone else is in 3 weeks out from a fight and you want to build their ego, so you're kind of like letting them touch you up a little bit because you want them to be like, oh man, like I'm, because there is something to be said about confidence. I've seen guys like get broken in camp because like they go in there and they lose every round that day. They're like, oh my God, I can't fight. I'm not ready. All this other stuff. I've seen other guys that aren't necessarily the best in the room, but if they feel like they are, they go out there and have a great performance.
Yep.
Fighting is fucking weird.
It's an emotional roller coaster. It's fun, you know.
You're glad you did it though, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The last fight I had was up in actually at TBA, at a tournament, you know. So, it was against a kid named Jaleel Barnes. That kid ended up going on. I shouldn't say kid. He was a kid at the time. He was 18, beat my ass. So he's a kid at the time.
Brother, I've been there.
Fucking 18-year-old beat me up and felt good. But no, but now he's over in Thailand beating the hell out of everybody in Thailand right now. So he's a big name over there. One of the top American Muay Thai artists right now. I want to say he ranked top 5 in the last 2 years.
Do you like the fact that it was like a juggernaut or like a kid that's like a phenom that beat you though?
Yes, that's what I was gonna end with. Is like I was happy that it was that person that beat me, because then I can look back and like in my career and be like, yeah, I fought him before, even though he was young, but hey, he still beat my ass, you know, whatever. But no, that guy. If let's just say that, like, if that is my last fight, yeah, oh well, you know, that was a great fight for me. I left it all out against a world-class athlete, you know, nothing more. No one can ever take that from me. I can never take that from myself. So, yeah.
We were talking about the itch to get back in. I have a very similar story where I went up against like a young phenom who's 11-0 now. You know what I mean? He's fucking crushing it. And I think to myself, like, because I have people tell me all the time, like, you should come back for one more to end on a win. And I always say, for what?
Yeah.
Like, why? I mean, we know promotions. Like, we could easily go out there and fight some shit bum and get a win. What am I going to do at camp for? What am I going to get? I would rather go out on my shield than wield a sword that meant nothing.
Yep.
That's just me. JP, brother, we did an hour. I like to ask this of people, but I'm actually going to I usually ask people, like, what's a piece of advice they would give themselves? But I'm actually going to ask you a separate question. Tell me about your greatest moment in combat sports.
Greatest moment in combat sports. Whenever, this is funny. So it was at a TBA, one of these tournaments. I'm up. I feel like I'm up 2 rounds, so I'm kind of letting the guy coast in the 3rd round a little bit. My corner tells me to throw a spinning elbow because I had backed this guy into the corner. Well, dude fucking throws a spinning elbow on me and lands it about the cleanest spinning back elbow you could ever land on somebody. And it stopped me in my tracks, and we both looked at each other, and I remember Drew going, "No, not you." It was hilarious. Probably one of the best moments of my, because we both were like, "All right, that was awesome.
How dare you listen to my corner?"
That was awesome. Like, you literally listened to my corner and stuck that elbow in my face. That was probably one of the best combat moments of, like, I can think back, and I've had a lot of good fights, you know, like locally and stuff with some great people. With like Nick Pipitone and stuff. You brought that up earlier. That was a great fight.
It was one of the better fights I've ever seen in my life.
Locally, that was awesome. But like at those tournaments, there were tenfold the fighters that we get locally, you know. So, and I hate saying that because I don't want to take that away from anybody from the gyms or any of the fighters. Yeah, but there's definitely, when you start to enter in those competitions and you get guys that have been training all year just for that comp, or they've racked up 12 fights because they were looking forward to that competition, and they're A-class fighters all across the world. Yeah, it's a whole different level, you know. So fighting those guys was stand out to me over anything, you know. So that's why I like when it comes up to anybody brings up memories, I'm like, oh yeah, TBA this or TBA that, because like that was the moment, the highlight of my career of fighting was fighting against some of the best in the country that they had to offer, against my style, really, because like we started out with Doug, and Doug quit pretty early on in our career, so we were kind of left up in shambles. Like, what do we do? We have a good foundation, but we're not great fighters yet. We have a good foundation, but we haven't found a way that
you guys are tough, athletic, technical, but you're not there yet.
Yeah, we're not there yet. So like building up to be the fighter that you are, and not just what your coach is showing you, right? And that's a big thing that I try to teach people too. I'm like, just because I show you a combo a few different ways, you have to learn to throw it your style, your way. And if you're doing it in my way, you're doing it wrong, you know? And I hate to say it like that, but it's like, you should develop your own style and system and fluidity of how you throw punches. Yeah, the foundation mechanics are there. Yeah, you snap the punches, use the hip, turn your hip, yada, yada, yada. Those foundations are always going to be whatever. But if you're not adding style or having your own rhythm to it, you're a basic fighter at that point, in my opinion. And I feel like that's where a lot of people kind of get in these motions where I coach people. Like, I coach people that come from other gyms, and like, I'll give them something to work on. Just like the simplest thing, like a 1-2 switch left kick, right? And I'll be like, all right, so we're going to switch that left kick up because we're setting traps up. And they're like, what do you mean? You don't just throw punches? Like, well, how do you set up your crosses? Like, I just throw it. So what do you mean you just throw your cross? Like, you don't like play with your left hand to get them to feint and then throw your right hand? You know what I mean? Like, there's levels to this shit. And like, you'd be surprisingly, a lot of people they just got in this mode where they just 1-2 left cross, 1-2-3 kick, and there's no.
I never blame the individuals. I always blame the coaches.
Yeah, and that's
you can't blame them. They don't know. They don't know what they don't know.
Yep, and that's why I'm like, as I know that because I've came from that before and had to learn myself to be my own fighter, and I'm like, I'm not trying to teach you how to be me. I'm trying to teach you how to be your own self, but give you your own foundation to where you can be whatever the fuck you want to be. You have a style that, you know, like, for instance, like Liz, I've got my fighter Liz. She's heavy boxing orientated. I'm not gonna try to train her to be a fucking heavy leg kicker, right? Like, it'd be stupid for me to be, you know. So.
She has her strengths. You're gonna play to them.
Exactly. So,
I always tell my wrestlers, I say, I'm gonna show you everything, and that's because you're gonna pick and choose what you prefer.
Yeah.
But if you choose not to use a technique, that's different from not knowing the technique. I want you to be aware of everything that you have at your disposal in case you need to pull into that bag and pull something out of your ass, right? You will choose whatever your style is going to be. It's my job to hit you with as many things for you to figure out what that style is. I think as a coach, we get too much lost in the sauce of trying to make people like us, and we forget that we are our own individuals, and like who we are is a culmination of. I've had many coaches in my life. I'm not like any one of my coaches. I'm a little bit of all of them, and you know, you might not be the only coaches these girls will ever have, or the guys that you coach will ever have. All you can do is imprint your style, your thought to it, and then let them off to the races. Let them figure out how they want to best utilize those skills. JP. Phenomenal training partner, phenomenal person, and if I go as far as to say, phenomenal friend.
Yeah, appreciate you, brother. Thank you. Good.